So the subject this week is action. How do we live our lives? And how we live our lives is always a key question, and it seems like it's a little more pressing right now. So in Buddhism, we have something called the three trainings: Sila, Samadhi, and Prajna. So Sila means action or morality. Samadhi means calming or meditation, and Prajna means wisdom. So they go together, they support each other, and it is said that Sila, appropriate action, right conduct, morality, is the foundation upon which everything else is built. And I found a quotation from Thai monk Thanissaro Bhikkhu about why to act morally. He says, when our actions don't measure up to certain standards of behavior, we either regret the actions or engage in one of two kinds of denial. Either denying that our actions did in fact happen, or denying that the standards of measurement are really valid. These reactions are like wounds in the mind. Regret is an open wound, tender to the touch, while denial is like hardened, twisted scar tissue around a tender spot. When the mind is wounded in these ways, it can't settle down comfortably in the present, for it finds itself resting on raw, exposed flesh or calcified knots. Even when it's forced to stay in the present, it's there only in a tensed, contorted, and partial way. And so the insights it gains tend to be contorted and partial as well. Only if the mind is free of wounds and scars can it be expected to settle down comfortably and freely in the present, and to give rise to undistorted discernment. This is where the 5 precepts come in. They are designed to heal these wounds and scars. Healthy self-esteem comes from living up to a set of standards that are practical, clear-cut, humane, and worthy of respect. The 5 precepts are formulated in such a way that they provide just such a set of standards. So he is a Theravadan Buddhist. They honor 5 precepts, which are really fundamental for all of life. And he describes them psychologically. Don't make wounds in yourself, and particularly the wounds of denial cause a person to be indefinitely unable to come into the present, to feel feelings, to wake up in any way, to come to terms with themselves. So here are the 5, and then I'll talk about more. A disciple of Buddha does not kill or does not take life. Originally, this was, don't kill a human being and don't harm a Buddha. Don't kill your parents. It became expanded to killing anyone or any living being. And then, of course, decisions become involved. A disciple of Buddha does not take what is not given, also known as not stealing. A disciple of the Buddha does not misuse sexuality. Now, this is for lay people. In Theravadan Buddhism, monks and nuns were expected to be celibate. In Soto Zen, we're not expected to be celibate, but we're expected to be very careful with sexuality. A disciple of Buddha does not lie. Now, originally, that was addressing the temptation to lie about being enlightened. It seemed like there were some monks who would go out on their begging rounds and tell people that they were enlightened, and so gifts given to them would be particularly beneficial. And so the Buddha made a rule against that particular lie. But of course, it's been broadened, and it's like, take care of the truth. There's many things that can be said about how to speak. And then the current description is, a disciple of Buddha does not intoxicate self or others. Sometimes this is phrased as, a disciple of the Buddha does not sell intoxicants, which always leaves you wondering about taking intoxicants, unless you're a Theravadan monk or nun, of course, in which case you don't. But they have either 250 or 350 precepts, some of which are very detailed. But these are guidelines for life. Truthfulness, not stealing, sexual honesty and integrity, not being intoxicated, both being clear and present with the way things are and encouraging those around you to do so. And not killing, not harming, not being angry. All those things, very basic and simple. And so let me ask whether there are any questions about those. Because we could talk for hours about them, but we won't.
Could you send either a print copy of what you read or a link to it? Because yes, it resonated about the regret and all of that. It's like, oh, yeah. And I'd like to have it to review and think on more, because it resonated so much. It's like, I think you have some work to do here, honey.
Okay, yes. I will send you a copy of my notes, which
Awesome.
include that quotation, and it includes the precepts.
Awesome.
Anything else? Should I go on?
Yeah, keep going. That hit, and it's like, oh, okay.
Right. Oh, and the meaning of precepts, these are not like the commandments, which I'm not sure what the commandments mean, but people think that they're rules. So the precepts are kind of advice on how to live if you want your life to work well, or how to live if you want to be enlightened, whatever that means, or a description of how an enlightened person lives. It's like, when you are intact and in integrity with your relationship with the whole universe, these things just become obvious and natural. And so, you know, a person who has a deep meditation practice and has some wisdom will naturally act this way. But for the rest of us, to start by acting this way helps us with the meditation practice, particularly the discussion of regret and the discussion of denial make it pretty clear how that help works. So I'm in Soto Zen Buddhism, and we not only have that statement, the precepts are the one gate to the Zen life. And we have ceremonies. We have a ceremony of entering the Sangha, the Zen community, as a layperson, and then we have a ceremony of becoming priest, which is known as home leaving. And both of those ceremonies consist of receiving the precepts. So a lay person will sew with a lot of ritual a little robe like this, which you wear around the neck. And a priest will sew the robe that is wrapped around you, which is the robe you see in pictures. And so these ceremonies have 16 precepts, 6 of which are, they're a surprise. So the first 3 precepts are actually the 3 refuges, which are, I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha. Now, the first thing to notice about this is taking refuge, like we're refugees. Actually, our lives are not working. And so we are asking for help, and we might be desperate for help. But anyway, it's like there's actually a place to go. We're not on our own. And so taking refuge in Buddha is sometimes thought of as taking refuge in this person who lived 2,500 years ago. But it's more taking refuge in being awake, or in the quality of being awake. Taking refuge in Dharma means the teaching. So we can rely on the teachings because they help us. And the other meaning of Dharma is the way things are. So we can take refuge in things being just the way they are. And sometimes that seems really difficult. One of my favorite quotations is from Reb Anderson, who is a teacher at San Francisco Zen Center, saying, "Sometimes the support of all beings feels more like the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune." So, we take refuge in the way things are. We take refuge in the teaching. And so, of course, people wind up studying the teaching. And next week I talk about the teaching. And I take refuge in Sangha. Sangha just means group. Originally, Sangha meant the community of monks and nuns. And then they said the fourfold Sangha. So it was monks and nuns and laymen and laywomen. So everybody who was associated with teachings of Buddha. And then sometimes we consider Sangha to be every sentient being in the universe. So taking refuge in that community. And that's an experience that we have sometimes. If I see a bald eagle fly overhead, I stop. That's refuge. If I see a sunrise that's particularly beautiful, my mind tends to let go of some of its noise and just stop. Those things are, and events are our community. They take care of us. We can take refuge in them as part of our community, and we can take refuge in them as the way things are. It is harder to take refuge in mosquitoes, flies. The flies have woken up for the season, and difficult people. So there is, I think the most important thing about this is recognizing that we are not gods of the universe. We're refugees. The next 3 are called the 3 pure precepts. And there are 2 formulations, and I'm using the more traditional one, the older one. Avoid evil. Do no harm. And there's a quotation about it from what we think is Bodhidharma. This is the house of all the ways of Buddha. This is the source of all the laws of Buddhahood. It starts with do no harm. Then it goes to do only good. The Dharma of perfect enlightenment is the Dharma of all existence, never apart from the present moment. And then they say do good for others, but I like the formulation, embrace all beings, embrace all things, embrace all conditions. And the quotation is, leap beyond the holy and the unholy. Let us rescue ourselves together with all beings. And so, yeah, so the life is, first, they're the narrow things, okay? Avoid evil and do good. And then there's this, embrace everything. Now, I will go on to what it calls here the 10 essential precepts. Sometimes it's called the 10 grave prohibitory precepts. They're all about things not to do. Buddhism is interesting that way because it doesn't so much tell you what to do. It tells you what not to do, and then what you do unfolds before you out of your own life. So it may sound negative, but it's not, it's open. So the first 5 are the same. A disciple of Buddha does not kill, but rather cultivates and encourages life. See, they're adding stuff to it. A disciple of Buddha does not kill. A disciple of Buddha does not take what is not given, and they've added cultivates and encourages generosity. 3, a disciple of the Buddha does not misuse sexuality, but rather cultivates and encourages honest and caring relationships. 4, a disciple of Buddha does not lie, but cultivates and encourages truthful communication. 5, a disciple of Buddha does not intoxicate self or others, but rather cultivates and encourages clarity. 6, and now we come into a section that are mostly about living in community. A disciple of Buddha does not slander others, but rather cultivates and encourages respectful speech. 7, a disciple of Buddha does not praise self at the expense of others, but cultivates and encourages self and others to abide in their awakened nature. 8, a disciple of Buddha is not possessive of anything, but cultivates and encourages mutual support. 9, a disciple of Buddha does not harbor ill will, but cultivates and encourages loving kindness and understanding. 10, a disciple of Buddha does not abuse the 3 treasures, but cultivates and encourages awakening, the path, and teaching of awakening, and the community that takes refuge in awakening. And that was the 3 treasures which were mentioned when I talked about taking refuge. Awakening the Buddha, Dharma is the teaching and the path, and Sangha is the community. So let me stop for questions. Any questions? Heather.
Yeah, I'm really struggling right now with our president and my feelings of anger, and I don't know how to deal with how much anger he elicits in me. And so help me.
Right, I'll make an effort. It's a challenging time when the person who exemplifies the violation of every single precept, selfishness, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, and intoxication. When such a person is risen to the highest office in the land and the most power in the world, and then uses it to hurt people, as we're seeing with the virus, you know, by neglect or intention, then you can't even tell. The question comes up, what do we do about this? And it kind of takes you off your feet. You know, it kind of is like, oh my gosh, what on earth can I do? And so we're seeing a lot of crazy responses, excuse the term crazy. But for instance, there is a thing going on called Zoom bombing, in which random people sign into Zoom conferences, take over the screens and show pornographic pictures or pornography in the chats. And so we're all learning ways to protect ourselves from having that happen. And just earlier today, I learned that the things that I knew were not sufficient. And the ways to protect yourself all involve putting a lot more restrictions and making it much harder to do this. You know, harder for people to join.
Shodo, can I
Yes.
just jump in for one brief comment?
Yes.
While this has been going on, I just got a news alert on the top of my screen about people, you know, breaking into Zoom conferences and stealing data and doing certain, I mean, it's just ironic to me that you would mention at this moment, and that just showed up and it's gone now, but
That's
who knew?
amazing. Yeah, right. And so there it is. And I've received an ad for a more secure kind of conferencing thing, having just learned, you know, spent hours learning how to do this one. So I haven't processed that yet.
But you know, if anybody in the world is doing that, this is the kind of conference they should bomb, because maybe they'd learn something.
Well, if they were paying attention, I mean, they're bombing, you know, Zen talks and services and Unitarian churches and who knows who else's churches. And so that thing is happening, and we can look at that and recoil from it. For me, it's scary. I think, okay, that is appalling behavior. I would have nothing to do with that. And there's a part of me that can think of people that I would want to do that to. Not pornography, but other harmful things. And so I see in me the seeds of action that could be harmful. And then you ask, well, what is the right way? You ask, what's the way to stop them? Because not only are hundreds of people dying because of whether it's not caring or whether it's intentional, I don't know. And a lot of harm is being done while we're distracted. But so how do we stop them? And we don't know. I mean, my choice of ways to stop people doesn't have to involve congregating in large groups. I'm just leaving out things like snipers and assassinations. I actually, it's like I've thought about it enough to go, okay, if somebody assassinated Trump, really bad things would happen. So
I'm so reassured to know that I am not the only one thinking about snipers and rifles.
yeah. It's
Oh,
like,
you are definitely not.
yeah. So, yeah, if it were known that he was assassinated, we would have martial law, civil war, or something. And there are people who have a lot more military equipment than you and I.
Yeah.
So, so that's there's a very quick response to that. You don't even have to look at the laws of karma. It's a simple understanding of human psychology says, that's a bad plan.
Yeah.
So pulling my mind back away from that and thinking, so where I do go first, having pulled my mind out of the really dangerous fantasies, well, I go to, okay, who has power here? And as humans, we tend to think we're the only ones in the world that have power. Now, some people think that God has power, and I really hope that they're praying because maybe God has power. And I think that all those beings, you know, the sentient beings that support us by being hard on us, I don't know that they don't have power, so I'm asking them to help. And I can do that with various kinds of ceremony. I can do it by myself. I've been known to encourage other people to do it. And maybe someday we'll have Zoom gatherings. But I have to figure out, you know, how to operate that. But I sometimes go outside and I talk to the rocks, or I talk to the river or the trees, or I sing to them or stuff like that. And I kind of throw myself on their mercy. And that's the thing that doesn't require too much of me, except to like abandon conventional reality. It does require that. But I'm amazed how many people also have abandoned conventional reality. And then people are trying to figure out ways to interfere with what's happening. So I've signed several petitions. Some of them had to do with stopping the continuation of pipeline construction, with the particular excuse that pipeline workers coming from anywhere being crowded together in close quarters without masks, and then doing violence upon the local people, who are usually indigenous people, because that's where the pipelines are. That's a recipe for death. So petitions are not very exciting. Somebody did a parade in cars at I think it was a municipal place building in New York, and I forget what the subject was. But those of us who have relied on rallies, on mass gatherings of people, we're stopped for the moment. But this stopping has a helpful quality because we're also being stopped for most of our daily life. Now, is anybody here still going to a job?
I am.
Okay, was that Doreen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and are you mostly working from home, or are you also going to physical places?
I'm mostly going to physical places.
Wow, so you're in contact with people and
Mm-hmm.
okay.
So at one of my jobs, which is 2 days a week, we are doing telehealth,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have a couple clients come in who don't have the technology to do that. So maybe I'll only see a couple people in person, but then there's, you know, the administrative assistant, she's there. I'm having with a few people. The other job is a residential program, and so there's 13 women plus 3 or 4 staff. So, and that's a lot more stressful situation.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that 4 days a week is I'm doing but patient health, and then I'm doing 2 days at the residential.
Okay, yeah. So I'm seeing people only by home, only teletherapy from home. And now it's legal to do phone calls for people who don't have the technology.
Yeah, I just heard
So,
that today.
yeah,
So I'm
right,
gonna have to
it's pretty
call some
new.
people. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call some people back that I haven't been able to contact. Schedule a time to meet with them over the phone.
Yeah.
It's
So,
been an experience.
yeah. Now, why did I ask that question? Oh, because what I was thinking about was for most of us, this is kind of a retreat time. And so I find myself doing more work than usual. But now that I have stopped watching the news all the time, which was hard, and hanging out on Facebook all the time, I am starting to have more time. And so we can change the way our lives work. And people,
I've been having a lot of conversations with
yeah,
people who are home, and it's really interesting that so many of them are not only accepting of the slowdown, but really embracing it.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of cool.
If enough people have that experience, we might come out into a different world.
That's what I'm hoping.
Me too. Yeah. Okay. So now we've arrived at that place. I don't know if there's anything left of the previous question. Where, oh, the question referred to Donald Trump and feeling angry with him.
I do have one suggestion, two suggestions actually. Deep cleaning in your house and pretending that you are scrubbing him right out of this world.
Ah.
It helps.
What a wonderful thought. What a beautiful thought. And I was going to say, it's like back to the basic practice, to notice that you're angry and to go, oh, I'm angry, I'm furious, and I'm afraid. You're probably also afraid. And I'm sad, perhaps, but let yourself notice the feelings. Notice where the feelings are in your body. And so put your attention on your own emotions and your own self, and be kind to your own self. And that strengthens you. You know, and the stronger you is more able to handle. There's kind of an assault coming from the outside. And so every way that we can strengthen ourselves, physically, emotionally, mentally, and this whole thing about the precepts and about actions is moral training. And it really does make us stronger.
The other thing that I have just in the last few days been able to do is get out in my yard and start working in the dirt. My fingernails are clean now, but just getting down to the basics, the dirt that supports us and everything. And it sounds weird, but with the hands in the dirt, you reconnect to the earth, to the whole basis of everything. And it helps. And you can also consciously drain out some of that anger into the earth, which is such a massive being that it can absorb that anger and release it from you. And it helps. It feels weird, but it helps.
I was going to add something to that, but you said everything. I support that. It's a good thing. And you know, sometimes when you're really angry or really upset, you need something to do that does not require you to calm down. It requires something that only requires you to mobilize your body, can be really good. And so we have things like opening the shades and bathing in the sunlight, or stepping outdoors, or stepping outdoors and putting your hands on the ground if that's available to you. And then in meditation, we have, okay, just sit down in a quiet place and take one breath. Or 2 breaths, or 3 breaths. You know, things that you can get yourself to do by conscious intention without having to already be grounded to do them. Oh,
Okay.
taking a shower is good too. House cleaning is well known. It's a spiritual action called purifying the bases. I mean, that's really true. It's called purifying the bases.
Oh,
Clean your room, yeah. And you added a visualization to it. But the basic act of cleaning your house is helpful.
Shodo,
Yeah,
I have to leave.
yeah. Thank you for coming.
I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you're doing and for this talk, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Yep. Thanks for coming. See you again.
bye,
Yeah.
Doreen.
Hi, Doreen.
Bye.
Doreen, was it you that had the anniversary?
No, it's Kathleen, and
Okay.
it starts at 8:30, so
Oh, you have lots of time.
I have 10 minutes left.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right here in Eastern time.
That's right, I meant,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, some breaths. Goodbye, Doreen. How about, I'm going to turn off the recording.